Victims were tied to carts under King Edward I of England. What does it mean for a man to be punished so severely that even his death becomes a warning etched into national memory? In the late 13th century, King Edward I of England, known as Hammer of the Scots, forged his power through conquest, control, and spectacle. But it was in 1283, during the final conquest of Wales, that Edward cemented a new form of brutal royal justice, hanging, drawing, and quartering reserved for those condemned as traitors. The first known victim of this punishment was Dafydd ap Gruffudd, the last independent prince of Wales, who dared to defy Edward's rule. After his capture, Dafydd was publicly executed in Shrewsbury, a process so shocking that it became a symbolic display of authority. Bound to a wooden hurdle and dragged through the streets, Dafydd's fate was intended to deter rebellion across the realm. Chroniclers of the time noted the king's intent to make an example of resistance, not merely end it. Dafydd's execution was not just the end of one man, but a powerful statement of control. Edward's reign also saw the rise of the Tower of London as a center of incarceration for high-profile prisoners, especially those accused of treason. Its looming walls became synonymous with royal power and public punishment. The tower's stone walls became a constant reminder of Edward's wrath. As historian Matthew Paris observed of royal justice, the king's wrath is heavy and the cost of defiance is steep. Under Edward I, justice was not only done, it was displayed. The spectacle of punishment became an instrument of governance, one designed to leave a chilling imprint on all who witnessed it. Edward understood the power of public spectacle, and he wielded it like a weapon, ensuring that no one would dare defy his rule. Rebels vanished into fortress pits by King Louis XI of France. Few rulers mastered the art of silent repression like King Louis XI of France, known in his time as the universal spider for his intricate webs of political intrigue. Unlike monarchs who ruled through open warfare or grand displays of power, Louis favored secrecy, manipulation, and psychological dominance. His most feared weapons? Not swords or armies, but stone walls, hidden chambers, and silence. He wielded control in ways that were almost invisible, making his authority feel suffocating, inescapable, and omnipresent. During the League of the Public Weal in 1465, a revolt by discontented nobles, Louis began to expand his network of secret prisons. Chief among them was Loches Castle, a foreboding fortress where enemies of the crown disappeared into oubliettes, narrow dungeon shafts designed to erase prisoners from public memory. The very name derives from the French oublier, meaning to forget, and for many captives, that is precisely what awaited them. In these forgotten dungeons, prisoners were often left to languish in darkness, their identities erased as they were cut off from the world. One of the most infamous episodes of Louis's reign involved Cardinal Jean Beaulieu, a former advisor who fell out of favor in 1469. The king had Beaulieu confined in a small iron cage, known as a fayette, reportedly based on Beaulieu's own design for others. The confinement, which lasted over a decade, was not about pain but isolation and degradation, a reflection of Louis's belief that psychological torment could be more enduring than physical punishment. It was a deliberate method of crushing the human spirit, and it served as a symbol of Louis's immense power to manipulate, control, and break those who opposed him. The Bastille Saint-Antoine and Plessis-les-Tours were also utilized as secretive detention centers, becoming symbols of state control. As chronicler Philippe de Comines noted, the king loved secrecy more than open war and feared no man he could cage. Under Louis, rebellion did not end in spectacle, it ended in silence. His prisons and dungeons were designed to erase not only bodies but entire histories, making sure that those who defied him would vanish from memory, silenced forever in his labyrinth of control. Castles echoed with laments under King John of England's rule. What kind of king turns hunger into a weapon? In the early 13th century, King John of England, often remembered as a monarch of cruelty and mistrust, ruled through fear, and starvation became one of his most ruthless tools. Unlike kings who sought glory on the battlefield, John wielded siege and suffering to crush dissent, earning scorn not just from his enemies, but from his own chroniclers. His reign became infamous for its strategic cruelty, using deprivation as a means of punishment. One of the most notorious episodes occurred in 1210, when Maud de Braus, a noblewoman entangled in disputes over fealty and unpaid debts, was imprisoned with her son in Corfe Castle. Rather than negotiate or seek formal judgment, John ordered their supplies cut off. The pair perished within the stone walls, an act so cold and calculated that historian Matthew Paris wrote of it with horror, calling John's actions unworthy of a Christian king. Their death was not an isolated case, but part of John's broader strategy to use starvation and isolation as tools of control. John's cruelty extended beyond noble hostages. During the First Barons' War, he besieged and recaptured Rochester Castle in 1215, refusing to show mercy to the defenders. Chronicler Roger of Wendover recounts how the garrison was left without provisions, a slow, deliberate punishment that further damaged John's already fractured reputation. His use of starvation as a tool of warfare was intended to break the spirit of the defenders and demoralize the populace. The siege was not just a military action, it was an exercise in terror. Even Pope Innocent III and the English barons condemned his tactics. The Magna Carta, signed that same year, was in part a response to his oppressive rule, seeking to limit royal abuses. Through starvation and siege, King John's castles became instruments of despair, echoing with laments that would tarnish his legacy for centuries. His actions left a deep scar on the collective memory of England, and his name became synonymous with tyranny and distrust. Enemies lined roads on stakes under Vlad the Impaler. What terror compels an invading army to retreat without battle? In 1462, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, halted his advance into Wallachia not by force of arms, but by the sheer horror of what he encountered. Outside the city of Targovica, thousands of stakes filled the landscape, each bearing the remains of those who had opposed Vlad III, known to history as Vlad the Impaler. Chronicler Laonikos Chalkikondyles recorded that Memney, upon seeing the so-called Forest of the Impaled, turned back in disbelief. Vlad's strategy was not merely to kill, it was to instill fear so absolute that no enemy dared challenge him. Earlier, in 1459, Vlad employed the same method against Saxon merchants and nobles in Brasov, accusing them of aiding his rivals. Contemporary German pamphlets circulated tales of his merciless reprisals, painting Vlad as both protector of his realm and a figure of terrifying retribution. These accounts, though sometimes exaggerated, reflect his use of fear as governance. The mass impalement of his enemies was not just a method of execution, it was a psychological weapon. The mere sight of these brutal displays was enough to strike terror into the hearts of his enemies and allies alike. Vlad's Ponari Castle, perched high in the Carpathian Mountains, served both as a stronghold and a place of execution. Its ruins remain today, a stark reminder of his legacy. Vlad the Impaler's reign was marked by order through dread, a calculated dominance where enemies didn't just fall, they became warnings for all to see. His use of terror as a political tool set a precedent for rulers who believed that fear, not loyalty, was the strongest bond a monarch could form with his subjects. Knights burned at the stake by King Philippe IV of France. On October 13, 1307, dawn broke with an operation that would shake medieval Europe. Acting with calculated precision, King Philippe IV of France, known as Philippe the Fair, ordered the sudden arrest of Knights Templar throughout his kingdom. These warrior monks, once revered for their role in the Crusades, now face charges of heresy, idolatry, and corruption allegations many historians argue were fueled more by royal debt and ambition than truth. At the temple in Paris, the Templars were interrogated, and many under pressure and duress confessed to crimes they likely never committed. The king's motivations were clear. By dissolving the order, he could seize their vast wealth and eliminate a powerful, independent force within his realm. The persecution reached its tragic climax in 1314 when Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, was led to the Isle de la Cite in Paris. There, in a grim spectacle, he was condemned to death by fire. According to accounts, de Molay maintained his innocence, calling upon divine judgment as the flames rose. His execution did not silence controversy, it ignited centuries of speculation, myth, and legend. Philippe IV's relentless suppression of the Templars revealed a ruler willing to wield both the throne and the pyre to cement his power. In doing so, he reshaped the political and religious landscape of medieval France, forever marking his reign as one of ruthless control cloaked in legal authority. The Templars' tragic end signaled the end of an era, but also marked the rise of a more authoritarian, centralized monarchy that would shape the future of France. Throughout the medieval world, the thirst for power drove kings to rule through fear, spectacle, and control. Their actions were not random acts of cruelty, but deliberate methods to secure dominance and suppress resistance. The decisions of these monarchs echoed across centuries, urging us to reflect on the fragility of justice and the enduring tension between power and principle. What defines true strength in a ruler? Mercy in restraint, or resolve in punishment? The past is never dead, wrote William Faulkner. It's not even past.